So when a kiddo comes to you and is feeling upset, it sometimes might not make sense, right? The story might be disjointed, it might seem confusing, maybe even a little silly at the time.
Sometimes how children and adolescents display these emotions, it seems so intense, and we want to just say, calm down, stop freaking out.
Because children can't see or hold their thoughts and their feelings, they have a very difficult time understanding that they are not their feelings and they are not their thoughts. In fact, children oftentimes, if they feel bad, they mistake that for being bad.
Let's say you're in the middle of Target and your kid starts throwing this epic meltdown, and you notice other shoppers starting to glance in your direction. You might start feeling heat rising up in your face, and you might have the thought, oh my God, I look like I can't even handle my own kid right now. I feel like such a bad mom. And that might lead to feelings of embarrassment or shame.
It's been challenging, because one of the first things when my brain goes is I want to play the blame game, if you will. I want to blame my daughter for her behavior. I want to maybe blame the teachers and the institution. Are they doing a good enough job? I blame myself for not being a good enough parent.
It took me a while as a parent to realize and to be honest with the fact that I loved my children, but I didn't always like them, especially the ones whose personalities were so different than mine. And I wrestled with that. I struggled with that. I thought, man, surely no parent worth their salt ever struggles with not liking their child. You know, I just thought, man, I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me.
Something in my head said, you cannot keep reacting the same way. Because when we react in a negative way towards our kids, they're either going to suppress those feelings, which we don't want, or they're going to blow up.
The answer that we have with our own unique child and our relationship with them and the challenges that we have with them is within us. So it's tapping into our own inner wisdom and intuition.
You as a parent are such an important person in your child's life, right?
As the parent, you have the opportunity to provide either a safe or a scary place for your child in how you handle your own emotions. You have the ability to impact generations to come in your family as you learn to do this.
The more support a child feels that they have, and the more confidence they're able to have in themselves, the more likely they are to succeed.
I don't have to tell you, parenting is hard, and even harder when your child becomes overly emotional. When their emotions run strong, so can yours. Fear, worry, maybe sometimes just irritation, or how about when it happens right in the middle of the grocery store? Embarrassment. Children's emotions can run out of control. In the early years, they have not yet learned emotional regulation. And some children just come out with big emotions. For these children, even small, seemingly inconsequential things can set them off. Emotional outbursts can be due to a whole array of causes: an underlying learning struggle, not feeling heard or in control of their environment, or simply not yet knowing how to express or channel their emotions in healthy ways. Emotional intelligence doesn't come built in. They can even mirror your own emotions. Even if you think you're hiding them, kids are amazingly smart and perceptive. Up until now, it's like a parent has had to be a neuroscientist, a psychologist, and a mindfulness expert all wrapped up into one. Up until you've learned what we have to teach you in this documentary, that is. We'll help you learn the simple, yet not always easy, techniques to help your child become emotionally intelligent. That will make parenting much easier.
So I want you to imagine this. I'm in the kitchen cooking, and I'm caring for my little one. My older two children are playing in the living room. You might know what that sounds like as a parent. Sounds something like this. Stop it! I said stop it! That's my daughter screaming. So I did what any good parent would do, and I shouted at them from the other room. Whatever you're doing in there to your sister, please just leave her alone. But it continues. My daughter continues to scream, and I don't know what my son's doing, but in that moment, I don't really care. I just want it to stop. So I shout again. Please, I plead, whatever you're doing, just stop bothering your sister. No good. My son, feeling hurt and blamed, runs to his room and slams the door. Now I've got a bigger problem on my hands.
Whoa, we've all been there, right? Now we've got an upset child. We're upset and we don't know what to do. It can happen over something small or something really big. But big or small, what do we do?
So my daughter has been getting really down on herself when she makes a mistake in her art or her spelling, and she'll just get so inconsolably upset that she's ruined, whatever it is that she's working on. When this first started happening, I would get really upset too. I'd be really frustrated that I couldn't get her to calm down. And surprisingly, that that didn't work.
And if I have an instance where, let's say, the grades aren't the way that I expect them to be, is yelling at them going to help? It might, but it's not going to make them feel better. It's not going to encourage them at all.
That usually just made things worse, obviously.
So instead of me barking down their throat and saying, I can't believe you got these grades.
And then after that, I tried being really positive and encouraging and trying to really get her pumped up and cheered back up and get her in the mood to fix what she was working on or keep working or move on or whatever it might be. And it turned out that didn't really work all that well either, and that actually tended to make her meltdowns a little bit worse too.
Instead of me, and they're scared and they don't know what to do, and they may be thinking in their mind, well, I'm doing the best I can, I don't know. And they may be afraid to say that to you as a parent.
When I'm feeling particularly frustrated or angry with a situation, it's usually because I'm resisting the fact that the situation is happening and I really don't feel like I have any control over it. I want things to go smoothly, and the fact is sometimes they just don't. Kids are their own little people, and we have influence over them, but we don't have control. And I don't think any one of us likes to not feel in control.
The behavior of that child, of that boy, that girl, is being triggered in most cases by fear. It can be a real or imaginary fear. In fact, most of the time it's imaginary fear. But it's a fear of not being good enough, of being rejected, of being told off, of whatever it is. But it's a very deep-rooted emotion that they feel it's threatening to them. And when they feel overwhelmed by that fear, they have no other way of expressing those emotions than the behavior comes.
Behavior is always communication. And if we can truly hear what this behavior is trying to tell us, then we understand the need that our child is trying to get met by this behavior. So when we hear it, we can heal it.
I sometimes notice a surge of energy coming up inside of me. I've gotten to the point where I can observe it and not be reactive, but there's still moments like this one when all of my parenting tools and strategies go out the window and I take a shortcut. I don't do what's the most effective in the moment. And it usually ends up biting me in the butt.
Because the behavior is only a symptom, it's an outcome of what's underneath. What we need to understand is that it's driven by a fear. A lot of the time, I'm going to disappoint my parents, I'm not going to be good enough, my teacher is going to tell me off for something I didn't do, or I did, whatever it is. But it's that emotion that is triggering the behavior. So don't judge the behavior, don't judge the outcome, don't judge the tears or even the aggressive behavior. Just be mindful that there is something that we need to uncover to help your son or daughter.
I know that parents really have a difficult time kind of, worrying about their child and whether there's something deeper going on. Some children are generally born with big emotions, but if you kind of have noticed a change in your child's behavior, for example, there could be something deeper going on, such as they're struggling in school or they are being bullied.
Just try not to see it as a failure, because you're not a failure. It's okay to get help. It's okay to say, I'm not really sure what's going on. We've tried A, B, and C. It's not working. I need help. That's okay.
So now my oldest one is angry in his room. My daughter's upset from the conflict they had. My little one's still needing my attention, and whatever I was cooking on the stove is probably burnt by now. But I take a deep breath and I realize I need to prioritize my oldest son. So I stop what I'm doing and I go to his door. I knock gently and I say that I'm sorry for shouting from the other room. And he lovingly replies with, "Go away." So I take another deep breath and I continue. I help him to understand his feelings by labeling them. I say, "You're angry, and that's okay." I'm doing something called inviting the emotion, inviting the anger. Said, "That's okay, honey, you can be angry at me. I understand that." I'm showing empathy now, right? I'm using all of my best tools and strategies as a parent. And his next reply is something along the lines of, "I hate you." So in this moment, I have a need to resolve this conflict, to feel better about the situation, and to move on. My son's need is to let me know just how angry he is.
Your child's emotions do not exist in a vacuum. And usually the biggest influence on those emotions are your emotions. Children are constantly interpreting our emotions and reacting to them. It's a survival instinct. They are strongly emotionally connected to you. If they sense a problem, they will react. Sometimes that reaction is fear, even if there's no reason for fear. Fear that can express itself in many ways. So the first part of helping them is actually helping ourselves. We can help them by becoming more aware and therefore more in control of our own emotions.
When a child is having difficulties, such as performing poorly in school, do our responses as parents to that struggle impact their performance, and what can we as parents do to minimize the negative effect? So when I was thinking about this question, I thought a lot about childhood development of self-esteem. So Piaget talks about the development of self-esteem in middle childhood, saying that it goes from an internal sense of self-esteem to an external, meaning that we start looking to others to help provide our definition of self-esteem. We judge our worth off of other people and their reactions to us. So as parents, we give kids a lot of feedback early on because we're their primary caregivers. So our actions and interactions with them directly shape their self-esteem in later elementary school and early middle school. So how can we navigate upsetting things such as poor performance in school? How do we navigate that in a positive way for our children. So I looked at this from the protecting their self-esteem. So the first thing that we want to do is be in touch with our own emotions, recognize our own triggers and emotional responses. So what about the situation is triggering what feeling in you? You need to recognize that, and then identify how you normally respond in these situations. Do you shut down and isolate? Do you throw up your hands and walk away and give up? Do you become angry and explosive? Do you try to control the situation? You have to be aware of yourself and how you react to things before you can interact with your child, because you don't want any negative thing to come across and shape how they're feeling about themselves.
You know, when we're able to manage our own feelings, we'll have a much easier time supporting our children in theirs. And that leads us to a key principle here. How our children feel about themselves is really the biggest determinant of their behavior. So if children feel good about themselves, and this is not just how they feel in any given moment, but in general a way of relating to themselves, if they feel good and they relate to themselves well, they'll behave in ways that support and enhance that view of themselves. So how do we help children feel good about themselves? Well, a good start is help them be in touch with their feelings, help them know what they're feeling, and help them know that we understand. Well, how do we do that? Well, by helping them name and accept their own feelings. So let me give you an example of that. So when you see a child, your own child or another child distressed about something that happened during the day, you know, instead of trying to maybe reassure them or by saying things like, oh, it's okay, there's nothing to worry about, try instead just to say what you see. You know, a simple statement like, I can see that made you pretty upset. Or, wow, you feel frustrated with that assignment that you were working on. Putting words to their emotional experience, acknowledging it, that it's real by naming it, it helps your child feel understood by you. And when they feel this, they can begin to self-soothe and they can begin to solve problems for themselves, even the problem that may be causing the emotional upset. And that's an experience we want our kids to have, of being able to kind of that self-direction. So to give you an example or a vivid example of this in real life, Google the phrase still face experiment.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I need my good girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
See the power of parental responsiveness in a child. And it's with a baby, but the principles that are at play there really extend throughout childhood and into adulthood. The subtleties of the ways that we as parents respond to our kids' emotions has such an effect on their ability to self-regulate and, again, solve problems for themselves. So just to summarize, the key is to start with how you feel and being aware of your own emotional experience and the things in your children that might trigger you. You know, if they have a hard time with something, being aware of what that could be for you, and, you know, putting that oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on them. And then as you do that, just tuning into your kids' emotional experience by saying what you see and reflecting that back to them. This helps them feel understood by you and seen by you, which will help them still feel better and also regulate.
Amazing, isn't it? How closely connected we are with our children. Are you starting to see how important we are to them? How connected our emotions are to theirs? And how strongly our own mental health can affect theirs? Because of that, one of the most powerful things we can do is become more self-aware.
It took me a while as a parent to realize and to be honest with the fact that I loved my children, but I didn't always like them, especially the ones whose personalities were so different than mine. And I wrestled with that. I struggled with that. I thought, man, surely no parent worth their salt ever struggles with not liking their child. You know, I just thought, man, I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me. But the challenge with being in that place of where you just really don't like your child's personality, not because it's wrong, but because it's different than yours. The challenge when you repress that, or when I repressed that feeling, was that I carried guilt around that, and I felt like I just wasn't free and authentic with that child the way I should have been. So freedom from me came when I finally got to a point where I was willing to admit to myself and willing to admit to even my wife that, gosh, you know, sometimes I just don't always enjoy being around them because our personalities are so different. So I think the lesson for me was about learning how to recognize my emotion. I couldn't recognize my emotion until first I was willing to admit that I had them, until I was willing to admit that I felt you know, like I just didn't always like certain of my kids because of their personalities. It was a hard thing to face, but once I faced the reality and said, well, that's where you're at, you need to own that and embrace that, then I could begin to deal with the emotion.
How we manage and regulate our own emotions probably is the biggest factor in how our children cope with their own. We as parents set the emotional climate in our home for our children. So you know what flight attendants say when you're starting a flight: secure your own oxygen mask before putting it on someone else. Well, this is especially true in the realm of emotions. The more we can be attuned to our own emotional experience, the better we can support our children. So this includes getting to know our triggers that may be drawn up through interactions with our children. There may be issues and experiences for ourselves that need more processing, or even maybe exploration with a mental health professional. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So for some parents, seeing their child upset can be very triggering for them, such that they feel compelled to do anything they can to calm the child. Now, the downside of this is that this can communicate to the child that child can't cope with their own upsetting emotions, which is not something we want them to learn. So for other parents, seeing their child upset may trigger more of a toughen up response, likely maybe because that's how a key caregiver responded to us. And of course, this can teach kids not to be aware of how they feel, or if they are, not to share it with their parents. So just becoming more aware of these reactions in ourselves can make a huge difference in our ability to be present with our children and to support them. So again, let me give you some practical ideas for this. At a time when you're calm, questions that you can ask yourself are, maybe, what thoughts go through my head when I see my child struggling? What do I feel inside when my child is upset? What did I learn maybe from my own upbringing about feelings that may be interfering with my present chosen values as a parent and what I want my children to feel and what I want them to learn?
First thing that we want to do is be in touch with our own emotions, recognize our own triggers and emotional responses. So what about the situation is triggering what feeling in you? You need to recognize that, and then identify how you normally respond in these situations. Do you shut down and isolate? Do you throw up your hands and walk away and give up? Do you become angry and explosive? Do you try to control the situation? You have to be aware of yourself and how you react to things before you can interact with your child. Because you don't want any negative thing to come across and shape how they're feeling about themselves.
After my wife and I had biological children, we began to see their personalities were different than mine in some ways. And those differences resulted in me having feelings of not always liking them. And so I had to own that, admit that, and just be honest about it. And once I did that, I could, deal with it. It took on another level when we adopted our child, our daughter. She was 10 at the time that we adopted her, and she came to us with some pretty severe emotional needs that were more challenging than anything my wife or I had ever experienced. And certainly she presented needs that none of our biological children had. And just the emotional toll that it took on us, especially in those early years, was overwhelming. And not only did I struggle with guilt of I don't always like this child, but I struggled with honest thoughts of, did we make a mistake in adopting you? Are we qualified to adopt you? Maybe we should have let another family with more skills than us adopt you. I had feelings of regret, wondering if we'd done the right thing. And again, I felt so guilty about that. I thought, surely we're supposed to be filled with joy, and this is supposed to be a great thing, and adoption is always good, and we're supposed to be happy about this, and these struggles are small. And I just didn't feel, it didn't always resonate with me. Now we're 9 years into it, and have absolutely no doubt that we did the right thing, and are very pleased with where we're at in parenting our adopted child with special needs. But again, it was one of those things where I just had to be honest with myself and say, Adam, just be real. You're struggling with feelings of regret. You're struggling with feelings of failure. Be honest about that. Don't deny it, and don't try to put on a happy face, and don't act like you're the martyr. Just be real with it. And again, I learned a lot in my clinical training as a psychologist, but it wasn't until I, as a parent, began to experience these really unsettling emotions that I just thought a good parent wouldn't experience, that I had to come to grips personally with difficult feelings as a parent. And it wasn't until I could admit them that I could recognize it and eventually move through it. So admitting it, that I had those feelings, and being real with myself and with my wife and with people in our group, our immediate circle, was an important first step.
Knowing our own emotions, that will help our kids so much, because very often we hide our emotions. We feel like, okay, as parents, as moms, we can't deal with that right now because we have to deal with our kids' emotions, but they're learning from us. They feel that energy. So when we're able to sit down and say to ourselves, I said this to my daughter, she'll get angry and say stuff like, I'm stupid, I'm dumb. And I say, no, ma'am, I want you to use the correct words. How do you feel right now? I'm mad because da-da-da-da, or I'm angry because da-da-da-da-da. That's what I need you to do.
To gain a full understanding, we have to look into how the brain develops. The brain develops kind of down and up, inside out, kind of like a beautiful flower. Now, the last part to develop is the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making, organization, planning, problem-solving, impulse control. Recent studies show that this part continues to develop well into the 20s. So basically what I'm saying is that the rational part of the brain won't be fully developed until about like age 25 or so. Underneath the prefrontal cortex is the limbic system, which is the part of the brain involved in emotional responses, among other things. The vast majority of the limbic system development occurs before birth. So it's pretty understandable why children and adolescents can seem to have these intense emotions, because their brain development just isn't there to help them be rational or regulate their emotions and impulses. Children and adolescents have to learn how to regulate their emotions and self-soothe, and that's where parents, caregivers, or other adult figures come in.
And this comes from Dan Siegel, who's a wonderful neuroscientist as well as an author. So I suggest you checking out his books. He has some great parenting books. So we'll get started. This is called the PALM Brain Model. So this is your brain. Lovely brain, right? This is your brainstem. This part is where your eyes blink and your heart beats and all those automatic functions happening that we don't really have control over. They just kind of happen. And then right here, you will see this is our limbic system. This is where our emotions are stored. This is also known as our lizard brain or animal brain. And then over the limbic system is our cortex. So all of this here, this is our thinking brain. And right here in the front where our fingernails are, that is our prefrontal cortex. This doesn't get fully developed until we're 25 years old. So parents, keep that in mind. And this right here is where we have the ability to problem solve, to be flexible, to be empathetic. So this is still developing till 25. And when we experience a strong emotion, boom, thinking brain is gone. We are acting from our limbic system, also known as our animal brain. And this is where fight, flight, or freeze happens. So that's why it is so important to know that when your child is here, they are not able to problem solve. And the number one thing to do is calm down. And when you are here, you are not able to problem solve. So what you have to do is also calm down, which is really important. Another key thing to know is that when you're here or somebody else is here, humans have this really cool thing called mirror neurons, and we take on how somebody else is feeling. So if someone comes in a room with a really bad attitude or angry, it kind of sets you off too. Maybe if your child comes home and they're having a really hard time, you can feel yourself kind of going like this. So we mirror neurons. So your child flips their lid, you're more likely to flip your lid. And if you're having a hard day, your child's going to react after that. So that's why it's so important. If your child is here, then you need to stay here, because that will help your child calm down here. If you're both here, this is not good for anybody. So it's really important to remember that if they're here, you need to be here. And how do we get here when we feel like we're going here? That's really important. So we do need to calm down, and we need those strategies to help us, because sometimes we just go there. So it's really important first to recognize when you're going here. And our body gives us clues, whether it's tightness in our chest, we're getting really hot, it is us raising our voice. Okay, that's a clue that we're getting here and we're gonna have to calm down.
Whether it's in the middle of a tense fight or situation with your child, or it's something that you practice on a regular basis, which I would strongly suggest, stopping and taking the time to reconnect with yourself is super important. But what does that look like, and what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you're in the midst of something that you don't have to react, or you don't have to respond immediately to your child in a situation, it's okay to take some time. It's okay to it doesn't make you look weak to say, I need till tomorrow morning to think about this. We'll discuss it, we'll rediscuss it then. That may not work with your 2-year-old, I get that. It depends on the situation that you're in. But what I'm suggesting to you is that on a regular basis, you get quiet, you find a quiet place to sit, a place that you won't be interrupted, to close your eyes. And the most important thing about this sitting is that you get past the thinking of your monkey mind. That thinking place, that place where you like close your eyes and you think, what should I do? What should I do in this situation? I'm not sure what I should do. You know, like you get past this fear, because in our minds, in our thinking, we have fear, and fear breeds disconnection with our kids and those we love most. What we want to do is get to a heart space. That's where our intuition, our inner wisdom, and our connection live. That's where our love is, right? So you may have to take a few minutes to breathe deeply, get past the thinking, and drop into your heart space. And when you're in the heart space, the next step is to ask for that clarity, that inner wisdom, that guidance around whatever the situation is. Whether it's helping your 3-year-old control their tantrums, or helping your 15-year-old learn how to get up on his or her own volition in the morning to get to school on time, or it's your 20-year-old and they have formed an addiction to alcohol that is worrisome to you, and what can you do to step in? Varying degrees of problems, but same asking for that intuition, that clarity to show itself.
To managing your emotions is to invest in your own personal growth. It's not a subject people really like to do, but believe me, if you take the time to read some books, maybe take some classes, and invest in your own education about yourself, it's going to reap rewards for your children, because you're not going to just pass along things that have come for generations. You're going to allow them to discover who they are as children. You're not just going to precondition them. So in other words, if you take time to self-reflect and journal and think about why you're making decisions, you're going to pass that along to your children. The most important thing about this is to get your own ego out of the way. Parents often worry that their children aren't going to do well in school, or not make a certain sports team, or not make the cheerleading squad. And what you're really doing is teaching and controlling out of fear. So if you do that, you're going to make your child feel less than and feel insecure. So really, by getting your own ego out of the way, you're allowing them to make decisions as they grow.
The first thing that I would suggest doing when experiencing a stressful situation with your child is to pause before you act. Take a deep breath and then just notice what's coming up for you in that moment. Start off with physical sensations. Are you feeling a tightness in your chest? Are you feeling a lump in your throat? Are you feeling heat bubbling up in your face? Just notice what's happening in your body. And then move on to the harder things to identify. So what thoughts are you having in that moment? What judgments are coming up for you? And then noticing how those judgments might be impacting your urge to respond. Giving yourself some space to figure out what you're feeling and why you're feeling it is really important, because sometimes our emotions are actually connected to the beliefs that we have or those judgments that are coming up, rather than what's actually happening. For example, let's say you're in the middle of Target and your kid starts throwing this epic meltdown, and you notice other shoppers starting to like glance in your direction. You might start feeling heat rising up in your face, and you might have the thought, oh my God, I look like I can't even handle my own kid right now. I feel like such a bad mom. And that might lead to feelings of embarrassment or shame. Now, it's likely that your child is not actually trying to embarrass you in that moment. It's those judgments that you're having about what is going on that are leading to your feelings of shame and embarrassment. So your kid, though, is really just responding to their own emotional state. They're getting overwhelmed by whatever the situation is, and they're having a hard time managing themselves. So it's really important to distinguish what we're feeling from our own thoughts and judgments versus what we're feeling in response to our children. I think being able to separate those things makes us more capable in that moment to respond to our child out of connection and empathy rather than out of anger or embarrassment or shame. We're going to have very different responses depending on where we're coming from in that moment. This is really difficult to do. And so in order to kind of practice this, it's helpful to do some mindfulness exercises in calm moments. So not just practicing it in stressful moments. So the more we practice mindfulness on a day-to-day, the easier it's going to become to be able to stay mindful in stressful situations.
I think us as parents can do to deal with an overly emotional child, and this is probably the most important, is to have empathy. I'll be honest with you, empathy was not something that was a natural born skill for me growing up. In fact, a lack of empathy led to my divorce. It led to problems at my job, and when I was starting my own business with partners and such, not having the empathy really had a negative impact on me and everything that I touched. So after the divorce, when the kids were young, I started to research empathy. I bought a couple books and I read, what is empathy, and is it something that you're born with, or is it a skill that you develop? So most parents discount the feelings of the child. They come home from school, little Susie is getting picked on, and they say, oh, I'm so sad, I had such a bad day. And the parent says, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Your day was great. Okay, well, how do you think that makes the child feel? And the same token, let's say you're not one of those parents and you dig a little deeper and you say, oh, what happened? And they say, well, little Johnny picked on me and he stole my book and he took my lunch money. And so what do we do as parents? We automatically try to solve the problem. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to the teacher. You're going to tell them what happened. They're going to fix it. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to fix it. And the kids, they don't want you to solve their problems. They just want you to listen. They want you to understand and have empathy. So when little Susie says, I was picked on today at school, you could say, how did that make you feel? And then guess what? They're going to talk about it a little bit. And they might start to solve the problem themselves. Once they begin to open up and realize the world is huge. You think about the scope of the world for us as adults, as parents, and then think about how large the world is for your little one. Everything has such a huge impact on them. And if you take the time to listen and have empathy, then you'll be able to really, really lessen the emotional outbursts from your child. Because once they know you're listening, there's no need to act out and cry and have a tantrum. There's no need to yell and scream at you. You may still get some of that, but the majority of time, and I guarantee you, when you show empathy and you listen, your child is going to talk to you about it, and then they're going to work through the problems themselves. I can't stress enough to not try to solve the problems of your children, as well as don't discount the problems. Remember, they're not little adults. They're not little versions of you. They have emotions that have not yet developed, and they're experiencing the world for the first time. So if they left their toy out in the yard and they're going to cry about it, don't tell them that that's stupid to do. Don't tell them that they shouldn't cry. Ask them how they feel and let them know that you understand that. Oh, you know what, Susie? When I lost my iPhone, I felt the same way. This gives them such comfort in the fact that you understand where they're coming from. And And since I've done that, really with all my children, I've noticed a huge impact, and our relationships have really developed further. And I feel like, just circling back, empathy isn't necessarily something you are born with. Some of us are lucky and we are born with empathy, but some of us aren't, and that's okay. You can learn the skill. And once you have that skill, you can apply it in all facets of life, especially with an overly emotional child.
Empathy. Pretty important stuff. Empathy is the ability to understand someone else's emotions just as if you were having them yourself. Yet it is markedly different from sympathy. With empathy, we must understand. With sympathy, we get dragged in. When we can have empathy, yet have the emotional strength to not have those emotions in control of us, that gives us a great deal of power. It's powerful because we become the emotional leader. We can use our own emotions to lead our children to healthier emotions, rather than reacting back and forth off each other and tumbling down into the emotional abyss. We lead the way to emotional higher ground.
The most important thing that we can do as parents, whether our kids are toddlers or teenagers or young adults, is to be emotionally connected to ourselves. What do I mean by that? Well, we get a lot of information coming at us every day, whether it's from sources online to neighbors to our school system, community, whatever it is. We, like our kids, get a lot of information coming in. And we've gotten to a place where I believe as parents, we think the answer for our problems with our kids or our kids' behavior is out there. And that's not really the case. The answer that we have with our own unique child and our relationship with them and the challenges that we have with them is within us. So it's tapping into our own inner wisdom and intuition. This is the most important thing that I think that we can do as parents, is be emotionally connected to ourselves and therefore then more attuned emotionally to our kids.
This topic is so important, especially as parents, because the way that we handle our own emotions becomes the way that our children learn to handle theirs.
A parent's emotional response indeed has an impact, tremendous impact on their child. As the parent, you have the opportunity to provide either a safe or a scary place for your child in how you handle your own emotions. Think back to your own childhood. My guess is you have very distinct memories of your parents when their emotions were out of control, whether you thought it was justified or not. That's an environment that you're in. The circumstance even could have been about something that you already were nervous to tell your parents about due to your own emotions about the circumstance. But being a child, you don't have the words or the emotional maturity to handle it. So now you are not only processing your own emotions as a kid, you have your parents' emotions as well to deal with. So now we're that parent.
As a parent, you understand the emotions that you feel, you constantly share, especially with your children, because they're very, very close to you. They're very, very in love with you, and you're very, very in love with them. And because of that, you share with them the emotions and any feeling that you really have very, very intensely. So if you think about it, if you're coming from a very positive mindset, right? You're having a great day, you're looking at your children, you're in love with them, they're your superheroes, and you're so proud of them. You share that with them. You feel every single cell of yourself and your children with that, and that's phenomenal. That is an absolute great filler for your children. However, in the contrary, when you're on a negative level or negative ship that you're floating around, like let's say you're angry or frustrated, not even at them, but maybe at them, and you're maybe disappointed in them, or just sad, or anything really on the lower level of the frequencies, right? You share that too. You share that with yourself, so every single cell of your own being is filled with that constantly when you refill that. And also, of course, your children. You fill your children like a tank with that heavy negative energy.
So children play off of us and how we react because they're looking to adults for direction. So if when you're reacting with your child, you become overly emotional or reactive, that's just going to add fuel to the fire. And also teaching them that's how you're supposed to respond.
Because we are sending another message to the child. That child that is emotional, that doesn't know why they are afraid, now they see the parents being angry as well. And a lot of them, what they feel is, it's my fault. I made dad or mom angry. So actually there's something profoundly wrong with me because I am
work things out and you have a better understanding of their perspective and they have a better understanding of yours, then you can come to the table together.
To be an emotional leader, we have to practice self-care. Self-care can look different for different people. For me, it's a little yoga to strengthen my body, a little meditation to strengthen my mind, and some shoshu kung fu to feel strong, powerful, and to let off some steam. These mind-body practices help us get in tune with our body. We feel emotions in the body, so when we become more in tune with our body, we also become more in tune with our emotions. The body is the path to understanding ourselves. As a Kung Fu teacher of over 20 years, I've seen radical changes in people when they gain control over their body. These mind-body practices have been a path to peace for thousands of years. Now, in our modern world, neuroscience is showing us why. And more than ever in this crazy, hectic world, we are realizing just how important they are.
Take care of yourself on a regular basis. I am a veteran who has PTSD. I have to, as a matter of necessity, take care of my mental health. And when I don't, it affects my children. So what we're going to do is take care of yourself first. It's like on an airplane. If the oxygen masks come down, you're supposed to put it on yourself first, and then you're supposed to help your child. That's what we're going to start doing here. You need to start taking care of yourself. And develop your own interests. 18 years is a long time, and it goes by really quickly and very slowly. So make sure you develop your own interests, because when your children don't need you as much as they do, like the ages from being a tween to a high school or whatever, you're going to have to occupy your time. And you're going to have to start preparing yourself for when your children are no longer in your household. I have to do that with my oldest daughter. She's 22. She's out the house. She's going to school. She's doing really well. Good job on your art show, Dion. But you have to make sure you do that.
And another important thing as a parent, which I find is really important, is to honor things that make you feel calm. Are you the type of parent that likes to go into action straight away? Or do you like to take a step back and get advice and tips first before you go and proceed? It doesn't matter what your style is, just honor it, because you want to be calm. And you know, it's always important as part of that process, no matter what you do, is that, you know, you communicate with your child to the best of their understanding. Even if they don't get it straight away, the fact that they know that mummy and daddy know, or, you know, we're working on it, is just a real, it's helpful.
Model self-care for your children. And what does this mean? It means eating well, taking time to get good sleep, and like I was saying, exercise, do things to calm your nervous system down. So when you're doing this, you're bringing the whole family into that. And with parenting, you want to be there with the children, modeling for them, going to bed early, turning the lights down, unplugging from technology, reading a bedtime story to them. This involves the whole family in it. And it's not just you telling them, oh, you go to bed, but you're staying up watching some movies and things. It's calming the whole household down. So then what does that do? You're getting better sleep at night. Then you can get up a few minutes before the children in the morning and make sure the house is calm, and you've got breakfast prepared. Helps them to get out of bed, and then you send them off to their day in a calm, organized fashion. Yourself, you're going to do much better through your day too. Then when they get home from school, have a healthy snack for them. Sit down with them, help them with their homework, and if they're struggling with a school or a subject, make sure that you're calm and you don't get upset about that, and help them. Do they need help with the tutor? Can you help them do that? But you're going to help them by instilling self-confidence and self-awareness and self-esteem if you don't get upset just because they're having a problem in a certain situation.
Another thing that I find helps with my emotional approach with my daughter is patience. Now, and it's more than patience just with her, it's more from the understanding of patience in the fact of and having that understanding that they're gonna potentially do the same thing again. Like, they're gonna learn, they might change, they'll modify, but they might do it in a different way, but all over again. So having the patience and understand it's a learning process. They're going through their own journey, expressing themselves and trying to do the best that they can do too.
The answer may come to you that you do need some outside help, that you do need a professional, that you do need some guidance in your parenting, that you need some outside service. But it may not. It may look like you need to just reconnect again, spending this time practicing reconnecting with yourself, spending time taking good care of yourself, self-compassion. Self-care in parenting is critical. I have 5 children. I've been parenting teenagers at this stage of the game, I think more than 20 years. My youngest is 14, my oldest is 32. And this practice of stopping, asking, and acting has saved me on so many occasions. It keeps me grounded. Our children come through us, not for us, except for the lessons that they reflect to us during their journey in an effort to grow us up along the way. Remember that.
The last thing that I find definitely helps with my emotional sanity is avoiding comparisons. And that's a huge one because you know, we want to compare our children to other children. We want to compare, you know, ourselves to our child. We're like, oh yes, I didn't do that when I was a child. All those things set triggers in our body and our mind and take us away from that calm state that we want to be in, because we want to have that emotional clarity when we talk to our kids about their problems and help them express what's going on for their day.
When we gain control over our body, we gain control over our emotions. And when we gain control over our emotions, we gain control over our thoughts. Although we may identify with our own thoughts, when we have practiced mindfulness for long enough, we realize that they are not really us. They are just things that bubble up. We can choose to grab onto them or choose to let them go. And when we consciously choose which ones to grab and which ones to let go, the quality of our thoughts change. And that changes everything. It changes us, it changes our children, it changes everyone around us.
My message for you today is to consider that your thoughts are everything. Everything. I like to imagine our thoughts as deliveries that come into our mind. We have the ability to accept the delivery, reject it, sort through it, or just let it go out the back door. Those thoughts that come in impact our emotions. Now, noticing our thought deliveries is not easy when our emotions take over, but you can notice them and you can change them. It takes effort and work, but it is so worth it. Let's look at an example. When your child forgets to hand in an assignment and then it impacts a grade that they have, say it's a final marking period grade, your thoughts could jump immediately to, not again. They are so lazy and unorganized. If they don't change, they'll never get a job ever the rest of their life. Okay, so those thoughts bring up a specific emotion for you. If you instead were to think something such as, yeah, so this term their grade could have been higher, but it also could have been a lot lower. And I know they struggle in an area of organization, so I'm wondering if they're already figuring out what to do for next semester or if there's a way I can help them. So notice that those are two different thought patterns and they bring up very different emotions in me. One is calmness, concern, and caring, and the other is anger and their whole life is ruined over a grade. That's not fun. The important thing to know is what you're thinking is a choice. It truly is. You are a grown adult, so of course you can choose to keep the first option or anything in between those two, but know that you are choosing to keep the thoughts and you are choosing to feel the way you feel. Your child's circumstance, their behavior isn't causing your emotion. Their grade isn't causing your emotion. Your child looking at you and being disrespectful isn't causing your emotion. Your thoughts about what happened is what's causing your emotion. Get this, understand this, and your life will change. This explains why we can have multiple people in the same room when one thing happens and 3 different people will respond differently. They may have completely different emotions. That's because coming into that moment, they bring different life experiences and the thoughts that they have in their mind about it are completely different. So with all this introduction, here's the big question I have for you today. Why not catch your thought deliveries? Why not learn how to control your emotions in a way that actually makes you feel good? If a thought doesn't make you feel good, why would you want to keep it? Curious, right? And the key here is if you find a thought that comes in that is an awful thought. This happens. It's okay. I need you to be calm and patient with yourself. Be curious about it, but don't get angry at yourself because now you have a new thought that's causing more anger and anxiety in your life, and you don't need that either.
Me as an intuitive coach and mindfulness coach, it's for me is like I practice a daily meditation. And I know it's really hard sometimes with the schedule to try and fit it in, but sometimes it's even 10 minutes before I go to bed at night. And it's just about connecting with myself, asking myself, how am I feeling today? Where am I at? Did I have a good day? Am I just reacting bigger than what the situation needs to be because I had a really crappy day at my work or a job, you know, or I had not nice interaction somewhere, I was sitting in traffic that made me unhappy, you know. So just taking those mindful moments just to breathe and connect and relax, that helps me practice for when I actually need it, like talking to our children when we're going through some tough times.
Our story starts with a series of unexpected deaths and serious health issues that hit our family one summer. These losses shook me and my family to the core. As a mother, my first instinct is always to prepare and protect my children. However, at the same time, I needed to manage my own emotions during this very stressful time. The collaborative mindfulness practice that we began that summer has led to happier and healthy relationships with my children. By applying the daily gratitude and mindfulness, we overcame numerous challenges. Now, this is actually backed up by science. Studies suggest that mindfulness-based parent stress intervention enhanced self-awareness and self-regulation among parents and adolescents. And that conjointly, this actually contributed to increased empathy, reduced emotional reactivity, and improved communication. It also reduced the intensity and duration of conflict. Our daily mindfulness practice helped us through those trials, and it continues to strengthen our relationship and connects us now in ways that help us thrive. It's fast, it's actually quite easy, and surprisingly effective. So anyone can do a gratitude. We can start with something very simply like, today I'm thankful for getting here safely, or today I'm thankful for breath. By sharing these gratitudes, you redirect the anxiety and channel toward optimism, and you can relieve the tension in the room. So gratitudes are like anchors, small anchors, and if you drop those anchors, over time it'll help you sort of stabilize and offer you an opportunity to be better for your children emotionally. And it teaches them also the skills of how to sort of maintain emotional stability. So try it tonight. So tonight when you get home, have everybody, as they come into the house or they come into the main room, take a note card and write down a gratitude. Put those gratitudes in a bowl. And as people grab for their plate, when they sit down to eat dinner, have them grab a gratitude and read that. I am confident that applying this mindfulness practice will help you better recognize and control your own emotions and help benefit your children. It can also actually be a blueprint to building a happy and healthy relationship.
The key to managing your emotions is through self-awareness. So these are doing things like practices like yoga or meditation or journaling or even exercising if you're an active person. That these will help you calm down your nervous system so that you can think about what you're doing instead of becoming reactive. You want to be able to respond to life's problems, not just react to them. And kids are like little sponges. They pick up on your emotions and your actions and your words. So the calmer you can be, the calmer
with her. Why do you say you hate math? Okay, well, a lot of people have trouble with math. So we're going to work through this together. So when you get angry, if you need to take a break, which my daughter, for whatever reason, she hates to take breaks. If you need to take a break, take a break. And so you can come back and just say, oh, okay, here we go. Instead of trying to push through this math homework the whole time when you need a breather.
Make sure that you are calm and emotionally ready to have a conversation with your child. Words said in anger are extremely harmful and they stick around with us long term. So you want to take time and get perspective so you can be calm, whether that's, you know, talking with someone else, writing down what you want to say to your child so you kind of have a script in case it becomes, you know, emotionally laden. Whatever you do, you just want to be calm, have a plan, know exactly what you want to say.
I've tried timeouts, being angry, and what I find works the best for her and for us is when I'm calm. Because when I'm calm and I approach the situation with an understanding of, you know, what she's done is wrong, and I let her communicate that, but I do it in a calm way. And sometimes it's not always easy. I try my best to stay in that state, but if I ever find like I can't do it, I definitely take a step back for a few minutes and just come back to the conversation later. I find I get
You have the ability to impact generations to come in your family as you learn to do this. It's truly amazing.
Emotions are not bad. They are here to help us. Even the bad feeling ones. Fear alerts us to danger. Anger gives us strength to fight when we need to. And even shame, the worst emotion of all, can help us improve ourselves. It's when we run from them that things get out of hand. If we repress them, the problems that cause them can get worse, and we can make ourselves sick. We need to learn to stay with our emotions. And when we do that, they will provide us with the message or the strength that we need. Then they will move along.
It's important to remember that having emotion is not a weakness. Emotions are normal responses to situation. It communicates information to us in a way that sight, sound, touch, and smell does. It tells us that something is fun, so we want to do it again, or something is scary, so we want to protect ourselves and not do it again. It tells us that something's not fair and we deserve to be treated better. But sometimes how children and adolescents display these emotions, it seems so intense and we want to just say, calm down, stop freaking out. But dismissing or invalidating their emotions can lead to thoughts that they don't matter, they're not important. And this could result in long-term consequences to their sense of self-worth and how they value themselves, how they may advocate for their needs as an adult.
Because emotions are not bad. You'll see that emotions are not bad. Emotions are only bad when they are communicated poorly. And that is exactly what's happening with your child. They are communicating their emotions poorly. So your job is to help them learn how to decipher what they're feeling and to communicate it properly.
Now, if their internal environment is experiencing some form of distress, like anxiety, sadness, anger, but their external environment, meaning the parent, some adult figure, their peers, are saying, no, don't feel that way, you shouldn't feel that way, it's very confusing. For example, if your child is upset because someone took something from them and you said, it's no big deal, get over it, or go demand to get that, punch them, then they learn that's what they should do when they get that emotion again. So when they're older and someone takes something from them, like maybe a promotion or credit for their work, they would get that same feeling of perhaps anger and injustice. And then what you taught them on how to respond to such an emotion or situation, that's going to be how they will behave.
Once they're in a place where they can process the emotion, that we help them identify what that emotion was. So it might just feel like a big upset reaction that took over, and they may feel like it's kind of chaotic and there's no order to that. So what we can do is help them identify that. So, oh, it seems like maybe you were feeling kind of disappointed because we were supposed to go to like the pool party, but then it got canceled. Do you think that maybe you felt disappointed and mad? Because I noticed da 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 da. And so helping kids notice that is actually very important for brain development. And so one of the things that we know for kids and their development that's important is integration. So when we are talking about pairing the words of what that feeling is, identifying it, sad, mad, happy, disappointed, whatever, and while they're experiencing that state or while they remember that state, we're horizontally integrating the brain. So it means that there's this sort of right brain chaotic experience, and we're giving the words an order to it. And sometimes kids really need that external piece to give the order to it. They may not be able to figure that out on their own. So we have to walk them through that in a calm and self-regulated way.
Is really helping your child understand the emotion they're feeling and access the language to be able to express them to you. Sometimes the intensity of emotion really feels like it's growing because the child is struggling to verbalize what they're experiencing, and feeling understood by you is super important. So also modeling identifying emotions with yourself or wherever you can in communication with your child can really help them get familiar with the words and learn how to express themselves more clearly to you.
with your kids, I have to remind myself, and with yourself. When you're feeling a certain way, don't push it to the back burner. Don't say things that are not correct. Use the correct terminology. Express your emotions in a positive way. Talk to a friend. Talk to your husband. Talk to whomever you need to talk to and express those emotions. Be vulnerable. Be open. Be transparent. Because guess what that's going to teach your kids? That's going to teach them it's okay. My kids have seen me cry. My kids have heard me say, Mommy is frustrated today. Mommy is angry today. So that they know how to properly express those emotions. And they will know when they get older and they have kids that they don't have to hide their emotions. They don't have to pretend like they're the perfect mom or the perfect dad and don't get angry or sad. They are able to express those because they've seen me do it.
Think about your emotions as similar to food. When you fully digest your food, you get something from that, right? You get nutrients, you get vitamins, you get minerals, you get energy from your digested food. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to your emotions. When they sit undigested in your body, it can wreak havoc. And just like undigested food can create bloating and discomfort, undigested emotions can also contribute to discomfort and anxiety and reactivity and quick impulsive responses. So when you think about it in this way, what happens is you start to shift the way you feel and the way you think about your emotions. So my tip is that you see them as something nutritious, which they are, but when they are fully digested and processed in your body. When they are undigested, that's what can lead to reactive behaviors. So your emotions themselves are not the problem. And I'm going to say, quit trying to control them and manage them. And if you're a parent, you probably have enough on your plate, right? You don't need to manage another thing. So once we let go of the need to manage and we start realizing, wait a minute, if I'm not managing, then I'm allowing myself to feel and fully process these emotions, then you're going to get something from that. What you're going to get is you're going to get an increase of awareness. You're going to get an increase of calm. And you're going to get an increase of trust that's going to come over you. And that's going to translate into your family life.
Once we finally own them and admit them and acknowledge them, what do? And what I've learned as a parent is that the best way for me to control or to regulate my emotions effectively was to express them in a way that wasn't harmful either to my children or anyone in the family. And what I mean by that is I realized that it was okay for me to feel like, I just don't like my child right now. Or it's okay for me to feel like, I'm just wondering if we did the right thing when we adopted this child. Those feelings are okay. But it's not okay for me to say to my children, I don't like you right now because you're different than me. Go away. I don't like you, adopted child, because this isn't what I expected. This isn't what I just don't think that kind of expression of emotion is healthy or adaptive, and it's not anything my children need to be hearing. So what I learned to regulate my emotions and to control my emotions, again, once I finally got real about them, was just to find a safe place to talk about them. So my wife became a safe place. She and I just agreed that we would give each other permission to feel what we feel and to express it to each other, and not the children, but to each other without judgment. And then we also got involved in some support groups for adoptive parents, and I was just so relieved to find out that I was not the only parent that adopted a child with special needs who struggled with feelings of guilt and shame and feeling like a failure and wondering whether they had done the right thing. And so that support group for adoptive parents became a very safe place for me, a place where I felt like I could be myself warts and all, and unpleasant feelings and all, imperfections as a parent and all, even as a psychologist, and just feel okay with that and not feel like I had to be the smartest guy in the room or the best parent in the room or share all my victories. It was safe to share my failures as well. So that was a big piece of me learning how to be an integrated parent, to be an honest parent, to be an authentic parent. And as I grew in my ability to be honest with my emotions, honest about my emotions, no matter how ugly they seemed or how wrong or inappropriate they may seem, just to acknowledge that they're there. And then number two, to find a safe place to talk about them that didn't do damage to my children or anyone else, that didn't shame anyone or blame anyone or condemn anyone. Once I found a safe outlet for that, I was able to regulate my emotions and express them in a way that was appropriate. And the beauty of that is that once I finally learned to be authentic and real with myself about what I was feeling, and once I found a safe place to express my feelings and talk about them openly, then I just felt lighter, and I felt cleaner in a way, going back to my children, feeling like I'd hit a reset button, you know, and I just had a new measure of grace for them and understanding and compassion and love. And it was just incredibly valuable to me as a parent to learn that personally. It's not something that you read about or I read about in a textbook and knew it in theory, but it wasn't until I lived it and practiced it that it took life from me. So again, I would say, you know, to fellow parents, you know, out there that are struggling, number one, whatever your emotions are, just own it. Just be real with it. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't gloss it. Don't try to perfume it or just what it is. And it's okay for you to feel whatever you feel. And then the second thing is to control those emotions effectively. Just find a safe place to express them. Find a safe person to talk about them. And if you don't have a safe person, find a journal that you can write those feelings out in unfiltered, just as they come, true thoughts. And then after you write it all out, you can burn it, and nobody has to know. But it was a good place for you to get it out. So I think those are the two things. Be authentic about your feelings and find a safe place to express them. And I think it'll go a long way in keeping you charged and where you need to be to love your kids effectively.
And I'm not saying that you need to make these negative energies go away, because they are part of human being. They're part of anyone. You know, anyone has that. It's more like that you shift these negative energies into the gift they really are. It shows you when you don't feel good. It shows you how far off you really are of your own path, of who you really are and what you want this life that you're living to be. And with that said, so anytime your children make you feel something, so you're angry because of them, it's never the child. It really never is the child. Has never anything to do with your children. Your children are merely truth mirrors for you. They're gifting you the opportunity for you to look in that mirror what is going on inside of you. They're showing you what's going on inside of you. It's not that they're giving you or initiating in you a new feeling. It's something that is already inside of you. And at that moment, the reason why you're feeling it is because you're ready to feel that feeling. What does that mean for you, parents? It means that you're in charge. It means that you're in control. It means that you can actually live your life so much freely for yourself and taking responsibility for how you feel, that you're actually setting your children free to be what they came here to do, which is to be themselves and nothing else. They're not here to love you. They're not here to make your life richer or to give you purpose in life. They're merely here in this physical life as energetic beings to be themselves. And that is the same for you. So emotions really do matter, and how you feel really matters. There is never anything that is wrong with how you feel. It's merely the fact that you can take responsibility when you're in a situation, say, how do I feel? And what does this make me feel? What feeling inside of me is coming up? And then acknowledge it and accept it, respect it, appreciate, thank it, and love it for what it is. A great gift for you to experience, something that's inside of you, ready to experience, feel, and heal for you. And that is really how you turn any emotion around, because once you take the responsibility of this is how I feel and it's my responsibility to deal with it, your child can let go of being that mirror to show you and to initiate that feeling inside of you. And what it also does is you're not sharing that then with your children. I'm angry and I'm sharing this with my children. I'm angry, I take responsibility, I shift and heal. Turn it into a gift, which means you share that feeling of everything is always a gift. You share that frequency, that feeling, that energy with your children. And that takes a great burden off your children's back, so they are free to be themselves and to really experience their physical life in a lighthearted, in an especially fitting way for them. And that is really what we all want.
I have to consistently practice and remember, Cherry, sometimes you need to let them see you and hear you expressing your emotions in a positive way so that they know, hey, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to show yourself some love, to speak positively to yourself as well as to your children. So don't forget about yourself. When you're speaking those positive words and uplifting words to your kids, do it for yourself as well, because if you're not, they're going to notice that. They're going to say, okay, mommy's always telling me all these good things and saying all these wonderful things, but what about herself? She isn't, or as a dad, he is never saying anything positive about himself. So that is a great way of expressing yourself, expressing your emotions in a positive way by being a great example. We so often think, let me take care of the kids. Let me make sure they're doing. Let me make sure they're going. Let me make sure they have. But we forget that we are living examples as parents to our children. So if they see us saying negative things to ourselves or positive things to them, they're confused. They're like, why? Mommy? And they may say something, because y'all know kids are honest. Or they may not say anything. They may just be like, oh, that's weird that mommy does that. And then they may grow up and do the same thing, talking negatively to themselves, but praising their kids. So we want to make sure we are being a positive example, whether we need to take a time out, whether we need to say, okay, let me calm down, okay, and sit and talk with my kids and let them know my expectations. But we really have to sit and be able to self-assess. It's so important for us to be able to self-assess ourselves as parents, as people, to know that we can be a healthy and positive example for our children.
There are no perfect parents. We're all learning as we go. Sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes we need to apologize. And once we do that, if we learn just a few skills, we can use them to diffuse a terrible situation and bring everybody's brains back online.
Now, when their emotions are really intense and really explosive, it's not a time to lecture or yell, because they may be too into their emotions to hear you. They're too caught up in whatever they're feeling, and they will react strongly if they perceive what you're trying to say is too aggressive or too dismissive. This is a time to help them regulate their emotions and support them. Watch your tone and stance and kind of neutralize it. Soften your tone, relax your face, your body language. Maybe ask what they need. Do they need space? Do they want to talk? Do they want to go for a walk? Do they want to be held?
Whether you're an adult or a child, when we're under emotional stress, it's extremely difficult to successfully access our verbal communication skills and use them optimally. When we're under emotional stress, not only is it more difficult to retrieve the words to express how we feel and what's going on in our internal world in order to solve problems, but it's also very overwhelming to try to take in the verbal information coming at us, to metabolize that information and to solve problems. The lucky thing, though, is that when we're under emotional stress, our sensory systems stay online. Our mind is still open to receiving input through things like rhythm, movement, and visual cues. So In this moment, when I'm standing outside my son's door and I'm remembering everything that I know about creative strategies, I stop talking and I go and get a piece of paper instead. I draw 2 circles. One of the circles I draw a sad face and I leave the other one blank. Next to the sad face, I draw a speech bubble and I write, "I'm sorry." Next to the empty circle, I draw another speech bubble and I leave that one blank as well. I slip it under his door with a pen. I wasn't sure if it was gonna work, but I thought I might as well try something different. It just took a few seconds before he slipped the paper back to me. In his circle, he had drawn a sad face as well, and in his speech bubble, he wrote S-R-Y, period. Sorry. He opened the door, gave me a big hug, said he loved me, and then we talked about what happened.
The past is the past. Whatever you said to your child this morning, yesterday, last year, 10 years ago, it's out there. Unless you have a TARDIS, a time machine, or you're just a magician, a wizard, which if you are, let me know about it. But you can't change what was said or done. You can, however, apologize to your child, and I am a firm believer in parents apologizing to their children when they are out of line. It is a great life skill to model. I also encourage you to shower yourself with patience and grace in that thing that's in the past that you may have said or done. Gift yourself with patience as you move forward and begin to process your emotions differently.
Again, this is difficult to do, so cut yourself some slack. We're imperfect. No matter how hard we try as parents, we are gonna mess up every now and then, and you know what, that's okay. In those times that we can't model effective emotion regulation, let's say we do lose our cool in Target in response to our kids' meltdown, what we can do in those situations is we can take accountability for our actions and model taking responsibility and owning up to our mistakes with a nice, good, heartfelt apology. And that's just as important in parenting.
When I slipped that piece of paper under my son's door with the drawings on it, several things were working here. One is that the piece of paper became a mediator between myself and my son. I no longer was asking him to speak directly to me. Instead, he can use the paper like a messenger, kind of like, tell mom this. And I could say, tell my son that, right? And by having that go-between, it lowered the defenses and allowed him to start to receive the message that I was really trying to send to him, which was that I was sorry for how I had yelled at him from the other room. The second thing that really was effective in this situation is that it allowed him to externalize his emotions. He could draw a picture on a piece of paper, take a look at it, and then better understand how he felt. Once we can externalize our internal world through drawing or sculpture or even movement, rhythm, poetry, any type of creative strategy, we can better have a grasp on what's going on in our internal world. And this allows our thinking brain to start to integrate with our feeling brain.
Isn't it amazing how just the few tricks we have learned so far can make us into even more amazing parents? Just a basic understanding of how the brain works and how we can become the master of our own emotions can help us help our children. We develop emotional intelligence for ourselves, and that emotional intelligence rubs off on our children. And that is sure to help them lead happier, more fulfilling lives.
These days, what's working the best for us is really to just give her the space she needs to work through those emotions that she's feeling when she is upset that she's made a mistake. You know, I'll very, very gently sort of reassure her and comfort her, and if she wants, you know, I'll offer ideas for how she might be able to solve the problem. But really, most often, I just kind of gently back away, and I let her know that I love her and that I'm right in the next room if she needs me. but I need to let her work through that on her own and do a little bit of problem solving. I think the thing is that kids have so much to learn about their own emotions that they really can't handle dealing with yours as well. And it's a really unfair thing to put on kids to have to ask them to manage, you when you're upset or you're frustrated. And so the best thing you can do is really just remain kind of that rock for them and give them the support they need to figure out what they're going through. And whenever I'm in, a tense situation or a conflict with my daughter or a tantrum, anything like that, it sounds simple or even overly simple, but I think the best thing to do in those tense situations is to maybe go to another room for a second, just take a couple of deep breaths and get yourself in the right space to go back in there and handle the situation properly. What they need is a safe space and the support from you to work through their own emotions. They don't need you raining down your feelings of anger or frustration or disappointment on them.
Well, I can definitely speak from experience as a parent of a 5-year-old and also a mindful life coach. I often have to practice what I preach in this situation because with my 5-year-old, she's just started school for the first time and she's had some emotional control issues at school. And, for us, it's our first time at school. And, where me and my husband, it's caused a lot of stress in our household. So for me, like in this situation, it's been challenging because one of the first things when my brain goes is I want to play the blame game, if you will. I want to blame my daughter for her behavior. I want to maybe blame the teachers in the institution. Are they doing a good enough job? I blame myself for not being a good enough parent. Have I done everything I need to do to set her up for success? And the last thing that I do sometimes is I look at myself and I ask, did I do that as a child? Sometimes it may trigger something, maybe I did or I can relate to when I was younger. And then I start realizing as I go through these scenarios in my mind that it's not going to do anyone any good. It's the blame game and it's causing me not to be calm. Because when I need to speak to my daughter and tell her and provide her different options and different solutions, one of the things that I find I need to be is calm.
We need to remember to use our heart. When we approach our child with compassion, they have an understanding that we're not there to punish them, we're not there to shame them, we're actually there to support them. When we walk in with compassion, empathy is right along with us. And empathy is what drives connection. It's what creates that understanding between two people. It helps our child understand that we truly see them and we hear them and we understand what they're going through.
A lot of times kids aren't ready to talk when we are. Using art allows kids to receive a little bit of what I like to call TLC. T stands for their home turf. When we make art or music or move with our children, we're meeting them on their home turf. When it comes to communication, verbally exchanging information is really an adult's home turf. It is not where children excel, especially when it comes to emotions and resolving conflicts. L is for lowering defenses. When we approach children with something to do instead of something to tell them, they feel a lot more relaxed. Even when I approach my husband and tell him I need to talk to him, he looks at me like something really bad's about to happen. You might have the same experience. That when somebody tells us we need to talk, we automatically feel like we're in trouble, like something's about to happen or we've done something wrong. But when we approach a child and offer to do something with them, even if that's just writing back and forth what happened or drawing little symbols to communicate how you're feeling about a conflict or something that you observed your child do, your child will likely be much more receptive to the request to do something with you or to look at something with you than to talk to you. And finally, C in the TLC. C stands for connection. The arts allow us to connect in a very organic and different way with our children than talking does. And not only does it connect us to them, but it allows them to connect their emotional world with their thinking brain. When they are able to draw a feeling and then look at it from a distance, they can get a lot more insight into what's going on in their internal world rather than feeling overwhelmed by it.
We've talked a lot about emotions, the importance of becoming aware of them, processing them, and channeling them in positive ways. We now know that to become aware of our emotions, it is important to build body awareness through mind-body exercises. Without these skills, emotions can fester inside and cause bigger problems. Science used to think of the brain and the body as two separate things, each having separate functions. We now know better. We know that they work together. We also know that we can help them learn to work together better. What's also important to realize is that the brain itself is really three separate brains, a triune brain. And because children's brains are not yet fully developed, those separate brains are not fully working together yet, and that can lead to emotional dysregulation.
So here's how I think about regulation. So regulation is a processing difficulty. And what happens is with all of us, information comes in from the environment and it's processed from our lower brainstem up to the midbrain and then up to the cortex. So when you have children who have difficulty with regulation, what actually is going on is they have difficulty processing information in the brainstem. So there's a few different presentations in terms of like the symptoms or behaviors that children exhibit when they have regulation difficulties. And so what that can be is they kind of fall into two different categories. One is that you have a child who has this classic ADHD symptom or behavior. And so that child either flip-flops between being really hyperactive and looking for new things, kind of literally like a tornado going around the room, or they can be sluggish and unmotivated. And so you have that type of behavior kind of clumped together. And then on the other side, you also have a child who can appear very anxious. And that child flip-flops between being like hiding or resisting or trying to limit the amount of input that's coming into them from the environment, and then also becoming more aggressive or reaching out, typically in an aggressive way. You also have two different types of regulation. And so you have a child who has a modulation disorder, and then you have a child who has a self-regulation disorder. And these terms are kind of flip-flopped and thrown around by a lot of people, but I'll break it down what it means in terms of like an occupational therapy point of view. So modulation disorder means that a child is unable to attain or become regulated. And a self-regulation disorder means that a child can become regulated but has difficulty staying regulated. So going back to what a modulation disorder is, it means that there's a processing breakdown in the lower brainstem. So when information comes into the lower brainstem is unable to process it effectively and either overreacts or underreacts to that information. And then you have a child who is unable to stay regulated. For self-regulation, you have a processing breakdown in the upper brainstem. And so kind of the same thing, there's still a processing breakdown in terms of the efficiency of what's going on and how information is processed, but it kind of works sometimes and then it doesn't work other times. So what's happening is you have information that comes into the lower brainstem, and the brainstem's job is to be able to determine, like, are you safe or are you unsafe? And when you have either an overactive or underreactive brainstem, it has trouble determining when you're safe. So you either have a brainstem that needs a lot of information, and then you have this sort of hyperactive child or hyperactive behavior, or you have an overreactive brainstem, and then you have this anxious child where very little information kind of sets them off.
Fortunately, all human brains have plasticity. They change and grow, which is actually a fairly recent discovery. It wasn't long ago that science told us that we were stuck with the brains we were born with. It said that intelligence was fixed. It said that if we had some disorder, then that's just the way it was. And that was a very damaging idea. Brains can actually change in miraculous ways. It's not a computer in there, it's a miracle. And as parents, we have the amazing opportunity and responsibility of helping to shape that miracle.
And so how you deal with regulation is basically it's a behavior of a sensory processing disorder at the level of the brainstem. And this is what I call a bottom-up approach. So as information comes into the brain, as it's moving bottom to the top, it makes sense to have a bottom-up approach and really focus on the processing within the brain before having the top-down approach only, and having one or the other, right, isn't going to work either. So a regulation disorder really is a sensory processing disorder where the processing breakdown is focused on the lower and upper brainstem, essentially. And so the nice thing about processing disorders is that you can always change how the brain is wired in terms of the pathway, where the pathway is, how efficient it is, etc. So from an occupational point of view, what you do is you design a sensory home program or a sensory program that focuses on the specific neurochemicals that are needed to carve new pathways in the brainstem, so that then the child in the brain can say, you know, I'm safe at an appropriate time and I am unsafe at an appropriate time. And then you're able to have a child who is better able to attend and learn and play in the environment. And that's really what regulation is. You have to be regulated to be able to interact with your world.
Now that we understand emotions so much better, it's time to tackle behavior. The behavioral sciences have progressed dramatically over the last few decades. We now know so much more. And one thing that we know is that some of the things that seem instinctive for a parent to do can lead to long-term behavior problems. Fortunately, there are simple, but not always easy, answers for that as well.
Challenge yourself when you feel the urge to change your child's emotion expression so that space is made to better understand their temperament and find the positives in it and their strengths. This mindset allows you to lower to their level and be more available and acknowledging their experience instead of bringing additional discouragement or added frustration and negativity to the situation that's probably already very stressful for you both. With the softened approach, your child can really feel more safe and therefore way more willing to hear your encouragement and ways in which they can express themselves in a more appropriate way, in a more effective way. This might look like, hey, I noticed that you seem really upset right now. Is that right? Are you feeling a little bit sad? I know it might be really frustrating to have to clean up your toys right now. But I know that your toys are really special to you, right? And what if we take 5 minutes to really feel sad, and then at the end of those 5 minutes, you can go ahead and start your cleanup. Would you like a hug during your sad time? And then really follow through with that structure that you've just laid out. And maybe give them a 1-minute warning before the end of the 5 minutes of sad time, and then let them know, okay, sad time is up, and so just like we agreed, now is the time to start cleaning up. And interacting like that, you've really acknowledged your child's emotion experience and made them feel seen, and often that's really a priority in those moments.
Maintaining their safety is most important, though. So if they end up throwing a tantrum, they might just have to let it out, but get rid of any dangerous objects nearby, remove them. Anything that could hurt them, kind of take them out of the area so they can't hurt themselves, or maybe you have to move them to a safer location. Like if they're very upset and they're about to run out in traffic, by all means stop them. Safety comes first. Otherwise, take a step back, assess the situation, figure out what your approach should be. If you do need to redirect them, keep your instructions brief, clear, and short. I see that you're super excited about going to Six Flags. No. Can you please stop screaming because it's hurting my ears and distracting me from driving? How about we sing a song instead? I see that you're angry that your brother hit you in the head with a ball. Take a deep breath, walk away, let me talk to your brother. Help them get to a more calm state by distracting them and putting that energy into something more helpful, like listening to music, running, drawing, screaming into a pillow, or maybe even like shaking out that energy. I know sometimes I get that anxious energy, and if I just like shake it off, it kind of helps a little bit. When they are more calm and seem to be more open to conversation, that's when you can talk to them. Hey, remember earlier when you got really upset because your brother hit you in the head with a ball? Let's talk about that. I totally understand why you got mad, because that would make me mad too. However, punching him in the face and throwing his ball into the neighbor's backyard is not the best answer. And then, help them problem solve. What should we have done different? Should we have asked an adult for help? Maybe take a deep breath? Tell the brother that you're angry that the ball hit you and you would like an apology? Help them and discuss ways on how they could self-regulate their emotions, like maybe deep breathing, walking away, meditation, finding some sort of positive distraction. Now, oftentimes we wait until the crisis happens and we go into lecture mode, expecting them to know how to calm themselves down already. I find that having regular conversations and practicing skills is more effective. For example, you're not going to wait till the day of the big football game to practice and run those plays, or wait until the day of the piano recital to learn and play that piece. You're going to practice days, weeks, even months leading up to that big event, so when it comes, you're ready. It's the same with emotional regulation skills. Practice even when things are calm, so when the crisis comes, the skills are known like the back of your hand.
Helping kids at a basic level understand and notice the physiological sensations associated with emotions. So one thing that can be really helpful is daily mindfulness. A lot of kids don't want to do that because it's kind of boring, and so it's really important that we set that experience up for success as well. So it might need to be an app that has like an animation to it first. It might need to be a very short mindfulness practice, like once a day for 2 minutes. It should be consistent, so at the same time every day. Really great way to make sure that happens is pairing it with something else that's part of a routine. Okay, I brush my teeth and then I do mindfulness. That will help kids remember. And then of course, parents being that external cue to help kids to remember to do it. And once they are doing mindfulness every day, they're going to be more aware internally of how they're doing. One thing that can be a little tricky is the breathing piece can be hard in terms of for little kids being able to do it correctly. And so it may be helpful to watch like a YouTube video or something else of kids or someone else breathing and then practicing that first.
Making sure that your kids have access to a lot of different coping skills and tools is a really important piece of allowing kids to feel really resilient and confident in their ability to manage big feelings. There are so many wonderful resources out there in the lovely world of the internet, right, that can help us. But my suggestion to parents is always, if it looks different on different kids, that's okay, right? So I think we would all love for, kids to sit down, practice deep breathing, listen to meditation. But we also know that that's not the right fit for everybody. It is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. So if some kids might feel better if they go run around on the playground or do push-ups and sit-ups, some kids might find art and music something that really helps to calm their big emotions, while others can read or do a puzzle to feel really, distracted and move on from, the situation at hand. And so I think allowing your child an opportunity to explore different techniques without judgment, without this expectation of what calm looks like, right? Having them have the opportunity to find what works for them and asking them questions like, what does it feel like when you do that puzzle? Or what was helpful this afternoon when you felt frustrated? What helped and what didn't help? Can really create a conversation and some buy-in for kids to actually use these tools.
Okay, how do I understand what's going on? How do I help my kid figure out what's going on and we can resolve it? And I'm going to be very honest, this takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of time, a number of conversations, but it's about creating the space, creating the opportunity for your kids to express themselves. But the first thing that you have to understand is they probably don't know. And they don't know because they don't understand the feelings. And they don't know because they don't have the words and the ability to articulate those feelings. So we have to guide them gently into that conversation.
The way we talk to our emotions. I think the way we talk to kids about emotions is also really important. So usually when kids are experiencing one strong emotion, there's another emotion there too. So the example I give kids is lightning and thunder. So usually, often, if we're out like in a storm, we might feel or see like a quick flash of lightning, and then we're like, was that lightning? And then we hear the thunder, And we know that, okay, indeed, that was lightning because we notice the thunder, right? And feelings can be a bit like that too. So if I feel disappointed because somebody said something like hurtful to me and they were my friend, maybe I feel disappointed and hurt, that might be like a quick flash emotion like that lightning. And then I might subsequently feel angry, and that anger is what I notice, like the thunder. And I think if we can help kids to notice that there is usually one or more, that there's usually more than one emotion, and that the other emotions might not be as obvious, then we can help them process things in a different way.
You want to understand your child's distress and emotional reactions. So sometimes kids can become overly emotional or reactive when they feel like they're not being heard. So with adults, it's like, yeah, I hear you, or go do this anyway. But you want to just take the time to stop what you're doing, sit down with your child, and really listen to what they need to say. When you do that, you can hear the meaning underneath what they're saying. So, I mean, they could be tantruming over, or not even a tantrum, just getting really upset over something like wanting a piece of food. But it might not be about that food at all. It might be about them not feeling heard and validated.
Look for patterns. What's happening just before that emotion? What is that it created that situation? It could be that they had to do things that they thought it was too difficult. It could be that they were denied something that they thought it was theirs. It could be that they felt aggravated because you had words of care for one of your siblings or another kid and not them. Whatever it is. But there is a pattern. Humans are pattern people. So there will be a pattern. Just think about it. What's happening? And make a guess. You will not know, but you can make a guess about what are those patterns, and that'll start giving you a few ideas.
The other thing is teaching kids that emotions aren't good or bad. They're comfortable and uncomfortable. Emotions have a purpose. They tell us that something's okay or not okay. And so seeing them as something that helps us to get through life and that is valuable to us, I think is really important. The trick is just how do we then manage them so that they aren't in charge. We're in charge of our emotions. They're not in charge of us.
The next thing I found that's really helpful is just being consistent and patient. You want to approach emotional outbursts the same way, calm, cool, collected. You need to remember that change does not occur overnight. It doesn't occur overnight for adults, and it definitely doesn't occur overnight for kids. It is a situation that needs a lot of practice and patience. You need to be able to remind your kid throughout this process that learning takes time and that it's okay if we make mistakes, and don't become upset if they experience another outburst. You don't want to make that a negative thing. You want to actively problem solve again with that.
I think another huge part of helping kiddos when they have big feelings is education. So I stand behind the idea that no child ever wants to feel out of control of their emotions. And while it happens frequently to some kids more than others, a lack of control and understanding why kids are feeling such big feelings can really contribute to lack of self-esteem, more frustration, and it's scary, right? I mean, for a lot of adults, if you've ever felt completely out of control or not sure, why you were anxious or why you were upset, it can be really, really hard, right? And so I tend to see this happen, especially with like later elementary school, early middle school kids, that they start to notice that peers are not, they're having a harder time controlling their emotions. They're having a harder time regulating their emotions than their peers, and that which can also contribute to a lack of self-esteem. And so education is as to why and how we're feeling these feelings is a really important tool to help kids, one, normalize and destigmatize the big feelings, right? But two, to help them feel more comfort and move forward. And so we can kind of start with that by either, helping kids to sense body cues, right? So saying, okay, when I feel anxious, my stomach hurts, or I get butterflies in my stomach, or when I get frustrated, my fists clench, right? So helping kids to identify direct body cues. The other piece that I sometimes like to bring out, especially for kids who are anxious or feeling a lot of big feelings around anxiety, is talk about the biological basis, right? I mean, anxiety is there to protect us. It is there to serve as a trigger and as a warning for humans at the basic level that something is wrong. And, I'll say to kids, it's okay that your warning alarm goes off more than other people, but that just means that you have to practice a little bit more to use coping skills to turn off that alarm when there's not actually, a threat or something going on. And I think education is power for kids and adults, right? The more we know, the more we have control and the more say and power we have over big feelings.
So as parents, you know, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're trapped in your house. You're managing your kids' homeschooling. You're also managing them, maybe, you know, hopefully participating a little bit in the household, cleaning up their stuff, doing what you say, being kind to each other, being kind to you, being kind to their siblings, you know, not whinging and whining and complaining all day long. You know, it's rough. I get it. You know, I'm a professional and I know how hard it is. I've been doing this stuff with kids for 20 years and it's not, you know, I'm not saying it's easy. But I do have to say that when you understand how we've evolved as a species to learn from our environments, that, you know, that understanding alone can give you a lot of power in how you manage, how you react to your children's behavior, because your behavior actually plays a really important role in your children's behavior. There's kind of a symbiotic relationship between what you do and what your kids do. And although that can be kind of, you know, very contradictory to what pop culture wants to suggest, you know, in pop culture, it's more about, oh, it's all about personality and temperament, or your astrological sign, or some of these other things that people want to, metaphysical things that people want to attribute behavior to, but those are not, that's not from a scientific actually understanding. From the scientific understanding, we actually know that as human beings, we've evolved to learn from the consequences of our behavior. So as we behave in the environment, and that behavior is followed by some type of consequence, that consequence is actually what determines whether or not we continue behaving in that way or not. So, you know, we talk, there's really two general classes of consequences in behavioral science: reinforcers and punishers. So reinforcers are consequences that follow behavior that make it more likely that behavior is going to continue to occur. So something good happens after we do something, right? So for instance, your child picks something up off the floor and puts it in the laundry hamper, and you say, Johnny, that was such an awesome job. Thanks for picking that up. So right in that moment, when your child behaved and you praised that, you provided attention or praise for that behavior, you actually made it more likely that your child would behave that way again. That's how it works. So the more your child, the more we behave, and that behavior is followed by reinforcing consequences, the more likely that those behaviors are going to increase in strength and become established as habits. So habits are behaviors that are persistent, that don't go away, that tend to be, that occur frequently, and that persevere over time. So you can also talk about habits as neurologically permanent skills or neurologically permanent behaviors, because there's a symbiotic relationship between behavior and neurology. So although like pop psychology wants to separate those things and suggest that neurology or the brain is all that matters, that's actually incorrect, because we are whole beings. And so as we behave, neurological things happen at the same time. And so as we behave, and that behavior is reinforced, there's also a neurological process that occurs. And it's actually this principle of reinforcement, of behavior and reinforcement, that produces permanent neural pathways in the brain. That's how we've evolved to learn as a species. So our brains are really have evolved to respond and adapt to our own individual experiences.
We know that positive reinforcement feels good, and that there are chemical reactions in the brain, such as the release of dopamine, that leads to electrical stimulation of the pathways in the brain. This triggers really a neural pathway for behavior, action, and thought. And this is the process of learning. We know this from animal studies, and we apply this same information to humans.
Which makes sense, right? So as your children are behaving, whatever follows that behavior is really what determines whether or not they keep doing that. So let's say your child whinges and whines when you ask them to complete an assignment for school. They say, I don't want to do the assignment, and all that garbage happens. So let's say that when they do those things, you historically kind of say, oh, don't worry about it, Johnny, you don't need to complete it, we'll do it later. Well, in that moment, you have now reinforced the whinging and whining, because as the child whinged and whined, which is behavior, you followed that with a reinforcer, and that reinforcer was letting them get out of it. So by letting them get out of it, Now you've made it more likely that they're going to whinge and whine in the future. Unfortunately, because in the moment they probably stopped whinging and whining, right? Because you didn't make them do what you asked them to do, so they stopped. So unfortunately, it's counterintuitive, because in the moment it looks like you solved the problem, right? You got them to stop behaving in an annoying way, which actually reinforced your behavior, because that whinging and whining is annoying. That's something you're going to work to avoid or stop or try to get to stop happening. So because your behavior is reinforced by them stopping whining, unfortunately, that's really reinforcing for you, which makes it more likely that you're going to behave in a way that actually reinforces the very behavior you actually don't want them to engage in, which is rough.
So sometimes rather than dealing with the child's behavior, the parent might try to solve the problem right away. And I'm going to use this example of picking up toys with younger children. So one of the first tasks we like to teach our child is how to clean up after themselves or to pick up. So if the child is asked to do something that he doesn't want to do, like picking up his toys, he might begin to cry or yell. And the parent might say, okay, stop. And the parent might then pick up the toys for the child. And what happens then is that the child calms down because the demand is no longer being placed on the child. And that's fine. And then, but here's where the problem comes in. The child just learned that if he doesn't want to do something, all he has to do is engage in a tantrum or yell and cry. But the other issue is that the parent has also learned something. The parents also learned that if he or she wants to get rid of that tantrum or that yelling or crying, he can back down. He can just give in and not place the demand on the child. So if I back down and do it for the child, he'll stop yelling. And what happens over time is that the parent's behavior of giving in is reinforced or strengthened. And the parent is more likely to do that again in the future, because anytime we strengthen behavior is more likely to occur in the future. So we're actually, by giving in, we're actually shaping the child behavior. The child has learned that it doesn't have to follow the direction, doesn't have to follow through, doesn't have to do what the parent is asking to do. But we've also shaped the parent's behavior. The parent has also, in a sense, his behavior, his or her behavior has been shaped by the child's behavior. Because as soon as the parent removes the demand and does what he or she is asking the child to do, the child calms down right away. And all that annoying screaming and crying and temper tantruming goes away, okay? So the parent's behavior is shaped as well. And the parent learns that if I don't want my child to get excited, if I don't want my child to get upset, I'll just do it for them.
So as parents, we actually sometimes have to behave counterintuitively, meaning we have to kind of ignore our own evolutionarily kind of established characteristics of behaving in ways to avoid aversive or unpleasant experiences, which is what we all will do as human beings. We avoid it. We've learned, we've evolved to work to avoid what's unpleasant or aversive. Because really, in the wild, that actually benefits our survival. But in the household, when your kid is whinging and whining about completing an assignment, getting them to stop doing that is no evolutionary advantage for you. It's just not, you're no longer going to be annoyed. But in the moment, but the problem is you are going to be annoyed in the future because they're more likely to continue behaving that way. So as parents, we tend to do two things. We tend to give in to our kids to get them to stop being annoying, or we tend to lash out and get really mad, right? Because sometimes we wait until a bad behavior occurs and we give into it, and then suddenly we've had enough and we react in anger. And that's normal too. That's a normal physiological response for a human to engage in when they're feeling threatened or when something unpleasant is being pushed on them. There's two typical responses, fight or flight, right? So we either flee by giving in or we fight by getting mad. Unfortunately, both of those things can actually work to make the behavior we actually don't want our kids engaging in worse. And in the moment they may stop, but in the future they're more likely to continue doing that. Because although we may think that yelling and getting angry is punishing, which means it'll make them do it less, That's actually not usually the case. Usually any kind of attention from a caregiver or a parent is powerfully reinforcing for a child, even if it's negative. Like a child can actually find getting an emotional response from a parent very reinforcing. Number one, it shows that they matter and that they have power and that they're powerful enough to make you upset. So unfortunately, some of our knee-jerk reactions, like giving in or getting mad, actually work against us, actually make it more likely our kids are going to behave in ways we don't want them to behave.
So anytime that behavior is occurring, it's likely being, if it continues to occur, it's likely being reinforced or strengthened in some way. And sometimes we as parents inadvertently do that. One of the ways that we might reinforce bad behavior is inadvertently, is by providing too much attention to it. We might, for example, we might launch into a long explanation about why this behavior is inappropriate and what we would rather have the child do, instead of saying, you know, I don't want you to do this. This is what I want you to do instead, and that's it.
So my advice to you is to, number one, always think about the consequences of what you're about to do, and whether or not those consequences are actually going to be reinforcing for your child's behavior. Because if they are, then you're working against yourself, right? So more often than not, what really is required is that we follow through on what we've asked our child to do, even if they complain and whine. And number two, we take a breath and don't respond in anger. And actually, more often than not, don't respond at all. Sometimes the most powerful consequence is being ignored. That can be a very powerful consequence for a child when a parent doesn't react very much at all to a bad behavior. That can be extremely powerful and actually work to decrease the behavior we don't want the child to engage in. So that's one piece of advice. Think about the long-term consequences of your reactions in a moment.
Another way that we might reinforce bad behavior is not addressing the behavior in a consistent manner or a consistent fashion. So for example, sometimes we address the behavior with consequences, and other times we don't address the behavior and consequences. The child then learns that, oh, sometimes I can do this and nothing will happen. And related to that is when parents sometimes put in consequences that they can't follow through with. And a good example of that is when parents use grounding for an extensive period of time. So I might ground you for 2 weeks because you didn't come home on time. But although you're grounded for 2 weeks, I can't be here to make sure that that grounding takes place on Wednesday because I have class that night. I can't be here on Friday because I'm meeting with some friends. So I'm not there to enforce the grounding. The best thing to do is to keep any kind of consequences that you're using very short term so that they can be implemented easily and you can enforce the consequence.
We have to change our mindset about how we run our households. Now, you know, a common tradition in parenting is using punishment, right? So basically it's a free, you know, everything's kind of a free environment. Kids have access to whatever they want until a bad behavior occurs. And then the tradition is to remove privileges, right? Which is actually what we would call a punisher. So in behavioral science, punishment or a punisher is a consequence that follows a behavior that actually is unpleasant, that makes it more likely that that behavior is going to occur, that it makes it not as likely that that behavior is going to continue to occur. So that's what a punisher is. Now, I know that punishment is the classic tradition in parenting, but just because it's a tradition doesn't mean it's supported by science. It's actually not. Because although punishment can sometimes get rid of behavior, there's a lot of byproducts to punishment that are really bad, that we don't want to happen. Number one, punished behavior tends to continue to occur, but in a really sneaky way. So when kids, like for instance, teenagers who are used to having privileges revoked when they behave badly, like being grounded, having their Xbox removed, having their phone removed, what tends to happen is that the child will start sneaking around or the child will start lying. And this is actually a scientific fact, that if punishment is the primary parenting method used, kids still engage in dangerous or unwanted behaviors. They just start doing them what we call covertly or in a sneaky manner. And unfortunately, that can be really dangerous as well. You know, we don't want our kids sneaking around and doing dangerous things. We want our kids to actually be free and confident to be honest with us about things, right? So we don't want to think that we've gotten rid of a behavior, but actually we haven't. They just started sneaking around and doing it when we're not around. That's what tends to happen with punishment.
Finding opportunities wherever you can to point out, praise, and encourage your child for all the good efforts and positives you see every day can really help your kid feel that you clearly notice a lot more of the good things than maybe the not so good things. And that encouragement increases the motivation and the effort that they're going to put into doing more of the good.
Another thing that happens with punishment is that the person who provides the punishment becomes averse to themselves and becomes someone that the child wants to avoid. And again, as parents, we don't want our kids wanting to avoid us. We want our kids wanting to be around us. We want our praise and our attention and our approval to be extremely valuable, because those are the things that we can use to strengthen adaptive behavior or the behavior we want our children to continue engaging in. We don't want our kids to avoid us because we've become aversive ourselves because we use so much punishment. So my advice is changing the ratio. So rather than waiting for a bad behavior to happen and then revoking privileges, privileges should always be earned. So I've been parent coaching for over 20 years. And the number one advice I give parents is redesign your households so that privileges are earned, not removed, which means that kids should never have free access to electronics. Kids should never have free access to every preferred activity or item that they want. That's number one, not realistic in the real world. And number two, it doesn't produce a strong work ethic, meaning kids don't learn how to work for stuff because they're never earning. They're given whatever they want based on any behavior you have until something really bad happens and then they get it taken away. That's not the way to parent. That's going to cause emotional responding, sneaky, covert lying behavior, and you and your child probably having a pretty unpleasant relationship and you being someone they want to avoid. So rather than that, privileges should be earned on a regular basis for expectations in the household. So you should set rules from the beginning. When you complete a school assignment, you earn this many minutes on your electronic device. When you complete your chores for the day, like cleaning out the dishwasher, loading the dishwasher, helping with dinner, doing the laundry, folding laundry, whatever it may be, those activities are worth a certain number of minutes on an electronic device or doing something, a highly preferred activity or engaging with a highly preferred item. So kids should always be earning, not losing. So what that means is if a kid whinges and whines and puts up a fight when you ask them to do something, you can literally walk away and say, okay, well, when you're ready to complete your assignment or when you're ready to complete this task, you know that's how you earn access to your Xbox or that's how you earn access to your phone. So let me know when you're ready. And then you can walk out of the room. No screaming, no nagging, no fighting. It's literally a very calm demeanor. All right, well, that's how you earn your Xbox. So when you get that done today, I'm excited for you to have some Xbox time and leave the room. So when your child is always on an earning schedule, when they're always earning privileges, it gives you power to strengthen and reinforce adaptive behavior. It gives you power to be calm in the presence of non-compliance or complaint and whining and whinging. Because guess what? It's not like you have to get mad and revoke privileges. It's just that they don't earn the privilege yet until they comply and do it the right way. Well, that's how you be the CEO of your household. If you were the CEO of a business, you'd never pay your employees off for lying on the couch, stuffing their face with chips and staring at a phone. They wouldn't earn their paycheck that way. Well, your kids shouldn't earn their paycheck that way either. They should earn their paycheck, meaning preferred activities and items, by contributing to the house and being responsible and completing their school assignments. And they should be earning that all the time, rather than losing it when they get out of line. Remember, consequences matter. We learn from consequences. Sometimes those consequences are delayed, and the immediate moment may seem like it gets better, but in the long term, you've made the problem worse. So don't react in anger. Try not to arrange your household based on punishment. Arrange your household based on earning schedules of positive reinforcement. Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. I can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you for being such an amazing parent. Armed with this information, you can change the world. Because when you break the cycle of emotional overreaction, you create strong children with emotional intelligence. And by doing that, one person at a time, we change the world. We make it a better place for our children and their children and every generation after that. It's a big deal.